here's a controversial one, because I mentioned that in an upcoming chapter we're going to hear about giving sacrificing your children, and this line,
maybe
verse 29,
29.
Yeah.
you must give me the firstborn of your sons.
Again, this is
To redeem,
between two unrelated things.
I will get to that. I will get to that. But it's from what I've read, the stories I've read, it doesn't talk about human sacrifice.
It's definitely not human sacrifice.
Yeah, but wait. Okay, go on, everybody. I'll shut up.
We're gonna have to get some more details.
I want to hear everybody in turn.
Yeah, because
Tomer, finish your statement
one at a time. Yeah.
There is a whole prop has an entire section, like several pages, dedicated to this part about is it referencing human sacrifices, and I think it comes to the conclusion that any evidence regarding human sacrifice, Israelite doing human sacrifice, is circumstantial, and this does not talk about human sacrifice.
Yet they had to dedicate a whole part to explaining that it doesn't imply what it certainly seems to imply.
What else could it mean?
There's two
Are you supposed to send them off to a monastery? Is that how getting your firstborn son?
Yes, two explanations.
Yeah. For example,
the older understanding would have been that they were sent off to be priests.
But it says immediately
all of your firstborn sons.
Yes, before the priestly class was devised, it would have been the firstborns, and then later.
So how does everybody in every household becoming a priest work for the economy?
And it immediately says after, do the same with your cattle and your sheep. Are they supposed to be priests too?
No,
the priests get to eat them.
Yeah, so they are you'll see this once we get to Leviticus more in depth, but essentially for the priesthood, they are to be supported by the people, and while they are the ones that can do the redeeming for you on your behalf, they can take the sacrifices and give them to God, but a portion of those sacrifices will be left for them, so they can sustain themselves. And yeah, go ahead.
Do the same with your cattle and sheep. Let them stay with their mothers for 7 days, but give them to me on the 8th day.
I had
doesn't sound like a priesthood.
I had some other verses here too that the Skeptics Annotated Bible, just to expand on whether this is child sacrifice or human sacrifice. It does mention this one, and Leviticus 27, 28, 29. No devoted thing that a man shall devote unto the Lord, for all he hath, both of man and beast, shall be sold or redeemed. Every devoted thing most holy unto God, none devoted, which shall be devoted of men, shall be redeemed, but shall surely be put to death, man and beast. And so the Skeptics Annotated Bible is saying that it does and it doesn't. But which, of course, what we've been studying this whole time is the Bible is composed of different texts that say different things that contradict each other sometimes. And so let's there is another story in the Bible that of course you all know this one. The Jephthah, he sacrificed the first thing to God that greets him, and when he comes back from the Ammonite war, and it was his daughter, and he did sacrifice her, and God sent a famine to David's kingdom for 3 years, and it said, "It is for Saul, his bloody house." To appease God in the famine that was caused by his predecessor Saul, David agreed to have 2 of Saul's sons and 5 of his grandsons killed and hung up onto the Lord. And then God stopped that's human sacrifice. And let me scroll down to the
So while she's looking for that, what I'm getting out of this is that Tomer is reading, and Lawrence apparently is reading from scholars who realize, wow, that would be really horrible if it meant human sacrifice. And it does seem to say human sacrifice, but it would be really horrible if it did say that. So it doesn't say that. That's not what it means.
So at all. I don't think so at all. If they would,
what's the reason?
I just told you.
Because
we both just told you that this is specifically consecrating people for the priesthood.
Yeah. Okay. So you just said that they're sending their sheep and goats to the priesthood.
Yes. Yeah. And their children. The children become priests. The sheep become mutton.
Leviticus says, "Shall surely be put to death."
Yes.
Man,
Yeah.
Well,
it was a really sucky priesthood.
When I'll get to Leviticus, I'll see what it.
I would like to actually recommend.
Okay, I'm gonna scroll up and get that first for you while Lila's talking.
Okay, I just want to say there's a big misunderstanding here, which is that these two interpretations of whether they are given to become priests or whether they're what's the word, redeemed. This is an example of where the earlier text or the earlier religion was different from the later ones, and the later ones were trying to fix it together again. The earlier religion would have been.
We have the word of a scholar here that should be on the show.
Kip Davis.
Kip Davis just commented and says, "This is definitely about child sacrifice. Heath Durrell has done the most extensive recent work on this." That's Kip Davis. For anybody who doesn't know, there's a FUD at the end of his name.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Kip Davis. That's interesting, but
I was looking him up on Twitter if he wants to join. If he can DM at Gonna Go For It or at GGFI on Twitter, then I can send him the link.
Yeah, but I think
I'll put him on the mailing list for any future show.
I think we've dwelled on this sub. Yeah, sure.
Can I just
sorry.
finish what I was saying?
Lawrence, it's Leviticus 27, 28, and 29. Got that? Okay, go ahead, Isaac.
This is, I think, as far as I understand, this is an example of where the later tradition tries to change what it originally meant, and it seems to be that originally meant that the firstborn would have been given to God and been priests and being the priesthood, and there was no Aaron, from the sons of Aaron or the Levites or whatever priestly class. It would have been firstborns only, and later on it changed, and in order to say like, oh, God, this older text is actually talking about the new practice. They changed it to mean, oh, they need to be redeemed. That's what it means.
Okay, I'd like to say a couple of things. I'd like to advocate that we discuss the human sacrifice element when we get to Leviticus because there are more verses on it. But definitely put a sticky note here for reference where we're going to go back and forth on that one because there's just a lot more meat there. I think Isaac has a point according to again, I use the documentary hypothesis. This would have been an Elohist, which would have been an earlier source from the northern kingdom of Israel. And yes, there, a lot of this stuff about Egypt and all that was largely a retrofit of the history to create a narrative that people could get into and feel supported by, but then they have to have this whole mythology of how the priesthood comes about, and then they have to erase any kind of practice of sending away your sons to be altar boys trained by the Jesuit kind of scenarios, which I'm sure was just lovely and contained no abuse whatsoever. But then you get up this mythology about how the Levites won the priesthood through genocide, and God chose Aaron with a magic stick, and that flowered, and we'll get to that later. So there is some point to say, there could have been a practice of sending away one of your children to serve God as a priest and live off the fat of the land and be, able to basically make their living at religion. But again, it's, there's more than one context.
Before we leave this topic, for the know that God does not like child sacrifice, Leviticus 18:21, and thou shalt not let any of the seed pass through the fire to Moloch, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. But all of these verses that they cite are sacrifices to other gods. Passing them through the fire, and that was the older practice of that region, was to pass children through the fire to Moloch or Baal.
Well, so that's the polemic, but the thing is, my argument isn't that like throughout the whole Bible God is against child sacrifice. My argument is that here I don't think it's about child sacrifice.
There are other cases where it clearly is.
Before I'll read my commentary, I want to say something, that if my position is wrong, then I will admit it's wrong. This is what I've gathered from the sources that I had. But if there are newer sources, as Davies pointed out, that this was published in 2017, as I've read it, then I'm happy to change my mind about this. So, thank you,
I'm happy to
this.
I'm happy to take to if Lawrence says that something is incorrect, I'm happy to consider that maybe Lawrence is right when he says so, because I know he's studied this more. But then, you know, it certainly reads it like that to me, and it's not that I'm not going to change my mind about it. I will, but that's the only way I can interpret it now.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Hello.
So thank you. I can
welcome Dr. Kip.
Thank you.
Yes.
As I mentioned to Aaron in the email, I'll probably need to kind of pop in and out.
Assembly of God asks, question for Dr. Kip. Once and for all, did Israelites sacrifice their babies to their God like the people of Molech did? I just need a clear answer.
A clear answer. Read 50-year-old book.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I will say it's disputed. This is still something that's controversial, but I think most scholars will say yes. And as a clarify, and something to like, there are varieties of religious expression prior to, you know, the emergence of Judaism proper much later. So I think the best way to answer this question is that yes, there were almost certainly cults of Yahweh who were engaging in child sacrifice. Something that Durrell brings out in his book is this idea, you know, this variety of religious expression prior to this time, which we tend not to see because the Bible's trying to consolidate all this stuff, right? So, and the other thing too that is important to point out is that most don't think that Moloch was like a god of any sort. What these were types of offerings that involved the sacrifice of children. So you could offer a Molech sacrifice to a variety of different deities, perhaps even, or, you know, likely even Yahweh. And I mean, it is a bit, I feel like sometimes it's a bit trivial when you recognize that there's kings who are sanctioned in Judah for offering their own sons as sacrifices in the first place. Who was it? It was Ahaz, I believe, offered his child as a sacrifice, and so did Manasseh, according to the Deuteronomist. And the text isn't clear on this. Were these sacrifices? They were child sacrifices.
Well, I think it is clear.
Is it clear that they're offering them to other deities?
Well, it's like in Exodus 34, it goes through that thing about, you know, how you know, you will sacrifice your firstborn sons on my altar. And then you have other places where you can buy your way out of that if you've got a sheep or a goat or something of equal value to your firstborn son. But then you get to Ezekiel 20:26, and there it has God lamenting that he created laws that they could not follow, and that specifically they cannot follow because he created the law to horrify them at the demise or the sacrifice of their own children.
And there's that weird story where Moses' wife circumcises their baby and throws the skin at the feet of Moses so that God wouldn't kill them.
The argument
I've already covered this in the Exodus 4, but it's just there's so much detail in this and so many versions of the story that
is a crazy story.
Yes,
it is. I will say
angel. Some say it's this. I don't.
There is an argument that circumcision may have started as sacrificing a small portion of the baby instead of the baby, and that could be part of the symbolism of it.
We know that Carthage, for example, hundreds of years later, sacrificed their kids to gods.
Yeah,
and that was a big part of one of those questions about morality in general. So to say that this might be possibility is not without reason when you think that we actually have evidence of these things happening in other parts of the world for a bunch of different reasons for religious purposes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go that far as saying that this is not possible. Now, is it relevant to this? I don't know, but that's just something that I
and the later writers felt the need to, to say against it. Like, do not do it.
Yeah, don't do it. So
nothing is prohibited, which has not yet happened.
Yeah, it will happen again and again.
Yeah. Okay. And then M. Doug says, if a child is taken from its mother at 7 weeks and given to Yahweh along with animal sacrifice, surely that part is baby burning? Well, we discussed previously that there are people who interpret this as you're supposed to give the children to the priesthood. That your children and your goats are supposed to go to the priesthood.
No. So I'm pretty sure it's 7 days, isn't it? And this is part of the problem. Within this ancient culture, when you remove a weaning baby from his mother at 8 days, they're not going to survive. So this idea that you're just giving the child over to the priesthood doesn't work because they're going to die.
Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious from within the text. These are offerings. These are child sacrifices. And I mean, the argument has been made by who was it wrote a commentary on Exodus back in the
Prop
in the 90s and said Prop, yeah.
Prop wrote it in 2006.
Right, that's it. The first volume was in the 90s though, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I know that the commentary that I use is from 2006.
Okay, and in there, I'm pretty sure he says this is absurd because
yeah.
He like for
as I said
evolutionary
previously,
reasons, right?
I don't remember exactly. He said he dedicates several pages of this, and then he concludes that it's not probable. It says that any evidence for the sacrifice of a Carthaginian children and Israelite is circumstantial, something like this.
I would agree with that. Just because Carthage is so late, and also because we have reasons to suspect that Herodotus, I think it's Herodotus who wrote about the Carthaginians. We have reasons to suspect that his account is badly
Greekified,
wildly exaggerated. So, but the more, and I would encourage, Lawrence now has Durrell on order, and he's going to read it, and then he'll be able to come back and report all this stuff to you guys. But Durrell goes through Prop's whole line of argument, and I think pretty effectively quashes a lot of it, just on the basis of the circumstances and understanding what the economy like just the basic economy of the period is like. In the first place, as I mentioned, it's impossible to just remove these suckling babies from their mothers for them to survive. That's just not, they're going to die. You can't just remove them and save them for service. In the second place, child mortality was so high in the period. I think especially for first-time mothers, I believe the child mortality of your firstborn was already like excessively high, up over 50%, if I remember correctly. And the whole notion behind this, the whole notion behind sacrifice, period, has to do with ensuring a better future result. So, you offer your firstborn lamb as a sacrifice, and in your mind, that's going to ensure better results for the rest of your flocks, your agriculture. The same holds, in the mindset of your own family, your own offspring. If you sacrifice that firstborn child, and bear in mind that this is one of the priorities within this culture, is just to keep having children, because that's the surest way to that's the best way to ensure the survival of your own your own line, your own family, yourselves as a group. So by sacrificing that first one, the mindset is this is going to make it better for us in the long run. And there was some traction, I think, within this culture through recognizing that women, after they had that first child, had an easier time with the second, third, fourth one. So in a sense, this was almost a fulfillment of, what they were doing. If you sacrifice that first one, things are going to be better for us. We're going to have more.
Future babies will be healthier, live longer, will have more survive.
So I think there's a lot of traction to this idea that it may not, it may not have been widespread. And I think you probably had to have some means to even be in a position to offer a child as a sacrifice. So yeah, no, not everybody was doing this, but it was certainly I think we can set it in terms of a viable option that was not frowned upon. In these
importantly, well, not everybody was doing this. There were some people doing this.
Yeah, I think very likely.
Our politics are very divided here, especially where we live in Texas, on abortion and the sanctity of life. And here God is maybe commanding the sacrifice of a firstborn baby. So like how judgmental is God going to be about abortion?
Well, if you read the Bible, God loves dead babies. It's his favorite thing.